All right, Echo, you've got some of the biggest biceps I've ever seen, man. But dude, how do you stay lean and strong year round? Like, what are your takeaways there?
Year round, I think that like if working out is just your part of your life, like everyday thing, I think that's the main thing. Rather than like, you know, how some people, if you're in like a competition scenario or something like that, you can have these offs and ons, you know. But I think if you just, you know, if working out is just a general part of your life, I think it'll just kind of fall into place. I think same thing with nutrition, by the way. And I'd say that's the best way to be, unless, like I said, if you're competing, you want to optimize and maximize all this stuff. But I think, yeah, it's just, I mean, if that's just your everyday life, I think that's just the way it works.
Full disclaimer, I would highly recommend a product called Seed if you're looking for a probiotic. It's not the takeaway from this video, don't get me wrong. I just thought I'd mention it because people always ask me what probiotic I recommend. So I put a link down below that saves you 25% off Seed's Daily Synbiotic, which is a prebiotic and a probiotic in one. You've seen me talk about it before, a capsule inside of a capsule. So really cool multi-stage delivery, fascinating research behind it. I just really stand behind it. It's the one that I personally use, and that is the honest truth. I don't use a lot of supplements, but probiotics are one that I do throw into the mix now and then, and I do use Seed. So that link is down below, 25% off. Highly, highly recommend it, especially if you're making a dietary change. So whenever you make a change, it's important to help remodel the gut microbiome by adding in a good probiotic. And most probiotics, in my opinion, are garbage. So that link down below for a good one.
What does your nutrition look like? I mean, I'm going to frame this first with, this is kind of interesting because I know you've followed me for a while, which is cool, man. And I've, you know, followed you and Jocko for ages. So like, what is your eating style? I mean, I guess it probably has something to do with stuff I talk about, but.
Yep, exactly right. Super basic though. Yeah, just get enough protein. Don't eat like a dick. Basically, don't freaking go drive through someplace, you know, don't eat a lot of desserts, stuff like that. Yeah, super basic. You know, try not to eat too much. Like if it tastes really, really good, that's usually a red flag kind of a thing. But I think being into, okay, you know how they say you got to be literate in certain things, right? You know how there's like financial literacy and, you know, I think nutrition and health and fitness is like you can be literate in that. And you can be literate on different levels. So I think it's just basic fundamental level of literacy in that will help everything. So, you know, they say whole foods and, you know, whatever the terminology is. If it's in a package, like that's a red flag kind of a thing, I approach it usually like that. So like fruits and vegetables, lean meat, actually sometimes not lean meat either, like freaking ribeye, freaking all day. But as long as you're not eating like chicken nuggets, and you're eating actual chicken, you know, it's like that, just little basic stuff like that. If you stick with that, I think you'll be all right.
Dude, have you heard of, just talking about this with JR, my videographer, mechanically separated chicken? You heard of that?
No.
Okay, it's like what's in like chicken nuggets, or if you go get like a Jimmy Dean sausage, it's like mechanically separated pork. Yeah. I'm always kind of curious, like what the heck it is. So I was like, because I've done videos on every friggin' thing under the sun, but I've never done a video on mechanically separated meat. Yeah. Dude, it's where they take like a chicken, basically pluck it and then shove it through an extruder, and it just like hydraulically compresses everything in the chicken, including the bones, and spits it out as a paste.
Oh, yeah. Like a hot dog. Yeah, like how they make hot dogs and stuff.
Yeah, it's basically, in fact, if you look at a hot dog, it probably is mechanically separated. Like, so it's, I don't know, man. Like, I mean, just like being like candid here, do you think that's good or bad? Because it's kind of like you're getting the calcium, you're getting possibly the organs, you're like getting everything. On one hand, I want to be like, that's disgusting and that's horrible. But on the other hand, I'm like, hey, that's probably the best way that people are getting like more quality.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I'm usually like, I know hot dogs and stuff where I know this because I was just talking to my kids about it. Actually, it was bologna, but hot dogs kind of the same thing. But they add a bunch of stuff in it, right, to like make it taste a certain way or whatever. But I feel like, if it's a chicken whatever, that you just see, it just chewed it up for you. Basically, that's all it did. You know, because like, you know how they say like when they make foods palatable, part of it is the texture, so you don't have to be chomping and chewing like all hardcore, right? Whereas like that's part of the processing. So really, that's it. I mean, unless they're putting in preservatives or something like that. Then I don't see the problem. aside from the chewing, what do you call mastication part of it.
I always hate saying the word mastication because I feel like people are going to think I'm saying master, the other word. And I'm
Sounds
like,
gross.
I'm like,
Sounds
I'm
gross.
going to masticate that chicken. You what?
It's true.
I'm always kind of cautious with that. But all right, man, like I watch you and Jocko interact all the time. You guys are always kind of talking smack on each other. It's awesome to watch. But you do it in a way that's like, I don't know, got a level of elegance with it. When you look at the mainstream population, without being too much of a jerk, what are the problems? Why do we have an obesity problem? Why do we have like such a crisis, especially in the U.S.? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, this is gonna kind of sound maybe a little bit along the lines of conspiracy theory, but I think it's actually true. Where it's like, because like all this stuff is like kind of like a battle, where, and I talked about like literacy, right? If you have health, nutrition, literacy, you can fight that battle a little bit different. But think of like, okay, so you're a parent, right? So if as a mom or dad, you kind of got to fight against the idea of, okay, what am I going to save time? Am I going to save like conflict with my kids because they don't want to eat dinner, or they do want to eat dinner? Got to get them to bed, got to get them to school and all this stuff. So there's like save time, save conflict, save all this stuff versus doing the actual right thing for them and their development, right? Like from a kind of holistic perspective. So it's always going to be like this battle. So, and it's been the case for a long time, but now it's harder to fight that battle because whether it be the food companies or actually it's just general technology really makes that part of the battle way easier, right? Like as far as, you want to save time? Bro, you can save time way easier nowadays than you could even 20 years ago. It's way easier to save time because of technology. Same thing with the food where it's like, hey, your kid doesn't want to eat his vegetables. Oh, don't worry. Well, we got this new stuff that's like, instead of vegetables, have them eat this. They're going to love it, kind of a thing. So food tastes way better, but it's not as healthy, kind of a thing. Even like, this is how bad the battle is, where they'll make exercise equipment or programs and market it as easy. Like, this is the easy, like effortlessly do this, which is like kind of counter. It's not like, that's the whole point of exercise. It's like to adapt to harder and harder things. That's why they say like progressive overload. It's like, you got to put effort into this thing. This is the whole reason it works. And then so they approach exercise like, oh no, less effort. Less effort is better. See, so it's like this weird battle you kind of got to fight. And I think that people are just losing that battle. That's what I think. Because the other side of that is getting stronger and stronger. Because things are just easier and easier. And people are like, well, it's easier.
I didn't think about the efficiency aspect with the food and like the nutrients in the food. I've actually never had it. You've said two things that I've never heard put so simply. And that's like the nutrition, fitness, literacy, right? Like, because we've all met those people that are like financially literate, like, financial gurus, but then they like don't know how to like talk to their wife, so they're like not relationship literate. Or you talk to like the double E, like electrical engineer that's like so smart here, but you're like, bro, how can you not figure out how to tie your shoes, like just, but it's like you condition weight, but then there's so many people like, for me, I've become nutritionally literate. Yep. So sometimes I catch myself when I'm talking to people, be like, okay, they're not nutritionally literate, that's okay. Mm-hmm. But like when they're rolling through life like that, their autopilot, their unconscious decisions are that there's no repository of information there helping them make a good decision, right? Yeah. So I've never thought of it like that. I mean, I've heard, obviously I know people have a baseline foundation. I've never thought of it as like nutrition literacy. Like you're illiterate in that. And it sounds condescending, but it's also very, very real.
Right. Yeah, especially when you say it, like you're illiterate, because like you're dumb or something, right? Just in life. But yeah, it's true. So like being nutritionally or fitness literate, like someone like you, where let's say it's lunchtime, like it's lunchtime for you. You kind of automatically, as a literate person, are going to consider how much protein is going to be in this lunch. You're just going to consider that kind of automatically. And some people will be like, oh yeah, it's lunchtime, I'm going to get a pizza for lunch, or a pizza pocket for lunch, which doesn't even sound correct for someone who's like literate. It's like, well, first, that sounds like, why would you ever eat that for lunch? Like, there's no function behind that, or it doesn't feel like it anyway. And then you're like, bro, how much protein is in a pizza pocket? Like, bro, why would I even eat that? You know, kind of a thing. And I'm not saying you'd be obsessive over it, nothing like that. I'm just saying that notion kind of registers on your mind automatically, you know? So people, they're on autopilot and they're not literate. So they're going to be like, oh, what am I in the mood for right now? That's it. You know, it's lunchtime. What am I in the mood for? Then they do that, you know? And that's what you kind of end up with.
Yeah, it's like it's so crazy. I think people, then, you know, I learned something not that long ago that I should have known a long time ago, because it's just basic English language, that the root word of ignorant is ignore, right? Like, so like, do you think when it comes down to making food choices, is it illiteracy or is it ignorance? Are people electively choosing to ignore that? Like, do they just ignore it because it's not as fun to learn? They know that even subconsciously, if they learn that it's going to ruin food for them? Or is it illiteracy? Like, where does it start? Does the illiteracy potentially start because it hasn't come at a young age, right? Like if you ingrain that in a child's mind, like young, that literacy, then they are literate in it. And then at that point, if they choose not to, it's ignorance.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it feels like it's kind of both, because, like, think about it. We're not literate in every single thing, you know? I mean, there's certain things where I've, like, okay, so thankfully my credit is good now. But back in the day, it wasn't good. And I knew that there was a whole thing that I could learn about credit to improve my credit. Totally knew that. But for whatever reason, like, I just never explored it, you know? Maybe because I guess at the end of the day, no matter how I thought of it consciously, at the end of the day, I was okay, or I was managing without being literate in that way. I was managing my life, you know, to a point where it wasn't nagging at me hard enough for me to take any kind of action. And I think that's essentially it with with nutrition, health, fitness, whatever, even like any kind of literacy, really, where it's like, bro, I've been managing this whole time, and I'm not like, it's not pulling at me. It's not nagging me enough for me to take any kind of action. So I think it's that. And then, especially with like obesity and stuff like that, it's kind of like, well, if the norm is obesity and I'm the norm, like, then what's the huge problem? Sure, I don't love being obese, but then it's not nagging at me because the guy next to me is obese too. It's kind of what we're doing, so it's not that big of an issue, you know? So it's kind of, you have that effect too, I think.
Yeah, until it actually becomes painful and the need to change becomes stronger than the desire to stay the same. Yeah,
and this whole thing about everyone else doing it too, it's like, I think sometimes we forget how influential that is, where, you know, how, I mean, there's all kinds of kind of cliche things that have a lot of truth to them, by the way, where, you know, how they say you're the sum of the average of the five people, that thing, right? Where, right, it's true, because it's like, and so I kind of put it this way early on when I talked to Jock about stuff. And I use this expression, which I didn't realize I was using it, but until he started using it, then I was like, oh, wait, that's something I would say, or I do say, is that's just what we're doing. That's what we're doing, you know? So let's say you didn't start jiu-jitsu yet. If you only hang around with guys that all do jiu-jitsu, at some point, you're just going to find yourself going to jiu-jitsu. At some point, you're going to make that decision and you'll be way more compelled to do it, just because that's kind of just what we're doing, you know? So, like, people who grow up in a certain type of family, they just naturally do the stuff that the family does, unless they're on some kind of a rebellion kick or something like that. So I think that part of it is real powerful too. So if there's a lot of people, like I said, out of shape, poor health, and you kind of hang around, and that's your environment, you're going to be out of shape, poor health. Like, you live in California, right?
Yeah.
So we don't see people smoking much. Like, if we saw people, like someone smoking a cigarette, I'd be like, bro, I didn't know we were still smoking cigarettes as human beings, you know, because you don't see that much here. But at the same time, if you grew up in a family that everyone smokes cigarettes, it's like, bro, that's what, I don't even think about it. We just smoke cigarettes. It's not a big deal. You know, it doesn't register on my brain when I see someone smoking cigarettes. So it's just a matter of like your environment, you know?
That's an interesting way to put it. Now, coming back to the efficiency thing you talked about, like putting vegetable, you know, hey, okay, your kid doesn't want to eat vegetables. Oh, no problem. We've got a solution for you. Like,
make it easier.
Do you think that is truly like a solution-oriented thing, or is it driven by a demand? Do you think that it's truly out of a need to want to help people? It's like, oh, well, you know you need those. Or do you think it's playing on a pain point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pinpoint 100%. And here's the thing. Well, it depends how you look at it. So yeah, it's a solution thing. It is a solution, short-term solution, 100%. I mean, really, the real like solutions are education-based. Those are usually the real solutions.
But those aren't fun.
No, it's way longer and way more effort, and you got to be patient. You got to have all these other kind of natural tools to really benefit from them, compared to something that applies to most everybody. You know, so if I say I can solve your problem right now, you're at least going to start listening. And most people, they don't have that. I think everyone has it, but no one, it's rare to have this in every aspect of your life, to be like, hey, I'm going to focus on the long-term solutions to all my problems in everything. You know, I think we all have that compulsion to solve short-term problems. So I think that's why it appeals so much to everyone. They're going to solve your problem right now, and a lot of times it's at the expense of the long term.
Yeah, when you're looking at just, I mean, it may have even started way back when we started like fortifying milk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of think back. Like right now, we live in an era. You have kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I got a 4 and 6-year-old, and my newsfeed, my Instagram is just filled with fortified options for kids. Like, you know, just, it's like, that's, I guess, like I'm in the algorithmic tier of this guy looks at food and he has kids. So like, okay, let's just feed him things that he probably, so I probably get a lot of what the, let's just say moderately health conscious parent would get, what the problems that a moderately health conscious parent would face. Okay, I look at that and I'm like, okay, everything's about either fortifying but we've been fortifying for a really long time, like as far as like milk is concerned, right? We start seeing like, so there kind of comes the question of like, who's making these decisions of like deficiencies, or like who's making the decision and saying, okay, this person or these kids need this. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time thinking that it really is about, hey, like, do these kids need this? Or is there an opportunity to either upsell or an opportunity to increase the value that someone sees out of this milk? Because now they look at the milk and they say, oh, cool. It's like, this milk is also helping me. Great. So I'm going to buy more of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all in play for sure. But I think, and then you have to look kind of from an individual standpoint. Like if you're talking about milk, or you're talking about, you know, I don't know, freaking chicken nuggets. Those are like technically two different people. So maybe the chicken nuggets guy is like, hey, let's freaking make chicken nuggets so they like to eat chicken or whatever, you know, to make the kids like their chicken lunch. And the milk guy, they're just saying, hey, let's maximize our business for our milk. Let's increase our customer base for our milk. They're not concerned about the chicken nuggets, but it all plays itself out like that because everyone's just trying, you know, like if you're a business, you want to get as many sales, so you want to appeal to basically the most people that you can, given what you're doing or whatever. So, and I think that usually the direct line to that is the short-term solution, where it's like, hey, you don't have to do much work if you take our product. We'll do your work for you. You just give us the money for it, and we'll do the work for you, and your problem solved, kind of a thing. And then. So it winds up taking a certain kind of person to be like, oh, I see what you're doing. And I think, you know, now there's so much information out there, so you can make more of your own decision on it, but it still takes effort. Even like, you know, like if you're educated on all this stuff, it still takes a lot of effort to do the right thing consistently. So I think that's daunting for a lot of people in a lot of ways. And I think that's why things sort themselves out the way they do sometimes.
Do you think that like podcast culture, content culture, for the general population of people that cannot execute is detrimental?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think this is anything new, but you know how they say, okay, so we know a guy named Dave Burke. He talks about the OODA loop, right? Observe, orient, decide, and act. And he always says the most important part is the acting part. But that can be the hardest, especially when you get all these payoffs and then you don't have the energy to act in a matter of speaking. So if we listen to a podcast on productivity or whatever, it's like you get this level of satisfaction by knowing this new information and all this stuff, that the acting part that takes like even more energy, you're not as compelled to do it, I think, sometimes. So you get like, I guess like your dopamine or something. I don't know how the mechanics behind it work, but it's like you get the payoff by listening to it, and then you don't act on it. And then you're kind of left with this kind of, oh shoot, I still need to do more. So then they listen to it more, kind of a thing. So it's like, you know how people, they'll talk about like their goals, and they'll talk to everyone they possibly can. And it's almost like they get the same payoff as if they actually did a lot of the thing that they're talking about doing. It's almost like that was a big part of the action, but it wasn't, So it's like this weird illusion that I think and I'm including myself, because let's face it, I've been in that boat too, where it feels like you're doing something and learning something, doing something good and part of this self-improvement kind of thing. But then at the end of the day, you haven't really improved anything,
It's just consumption.
Yeah. Just consumption.
It's
exactly
like,
right.
It's like I'm gonna eat this steak and it's doing something for me, or I'm eating this and it's doing something for me, but without the stimulus or without the action, without the output, it's just not doing much, right?
Yeah. And I don't think it's actually anything new, really. I mean, podcast culture, how you put it, that's just one of many. I mean, like even in like education, that's how it is too, or it can be anyway, where you go to school, get straight A's, go to a great college, and then like you just become a professor or something like that, where like if you go to school to learn something, then you don't go out and do the thing or whatever. It's kind of the same.
Yeah, you're doing a disservice to your education if you don't do something with it.
I think so. Yeah.
It's like a slap in the face in a way. I think people, like education is an interesting one, because especially now, we're in a time where I don't know if my kids, 6 and 4, when they are about to graduate high school, I don't know if college is even going to be a thing anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah.
And personally, and I might get just raked over the coals for saying this, I kind of don't care, because I want them to do what makes them happy and succeed, right? Yeah. In a way that's relative for them. And I'm like starting to see that, okay, well, yeah, we're at a point now where I think more and more of the youth is understanding, thanks to, in a positive way, thanks to podcast culture and all this, that, wait a minute, like I can learn and I can streamline, and what I've always called like the leapfrog approach, like being able to like, okay, if there's a way to get somewhere ethically, true to your moral compass, but faster, why on earth would you not do that?
Yeah.
Why on earth would you not do that? Why would you go through a rigmarole that is potentially unnecessary?
Yeah.
You're just putting up with bullshit for 4 years? Yeah. Is that all it is?
Yeah, basically. I mean, and of course, I never want to discount the college experience, even aside from the education part of it, because there's a lot of value there, I think, for a lot of people. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and then again, I had the experience of knowing what it's like to go to college and then be done with it and literally not use what I learned in the classroom in real life. So more so than I think I'm biased, I think I'm like, I dodged the bias, because a lot of people, and I have people in my family who are like, okay, so I finished college 7 credits short, so I don't have a degree, but it was like in a criminology class. I just needed a credit, right, that I just didn't go to the class or whatever, so I didn't graduate, but I went to college, did all my regular, the real classes for my degree, all this stuff. So there's people in my family that would say, hey, you should go and finish. This is like 15 years after I'm done with college, by the way. And I do something completely different in life. And like, I'm well into my career. I'm well into it. Like, I don't need the skill, whatever I'm going to learn in college, which would literally be a criminology or some sociology class. They're like, no, just to say that you finished it. And I was like, that's really the issue there. Where people, they have this like weird like thing in their, I mean, to call it weird, I mean, might be kind of dismissive, but they have this thing in their brain that's like, no, that's just what you're supposed to do. I don't know why, but like, I just know that that's what you're supposed to do. It's a good thing, just generally speaking. And I was like, okay, I think that lacks a lot of, not only nuance, but like a lot of thought, I think. Because if you're not like, especially if you're committing that much of your life to anything, but in this case, college, if you're committing that much of your life to college or whatever, and then it's literally not part of your foreseeable life, it's like, I think that's a mistake. And I think that whether it be 4 years or 1 year or 2 years or freaking 1 week or whatever, if you want to commit yourself to learning and getting educated, but if you point in the direction of it being useful, literally useful in your real life, I think that's going to be way better than just being able to say you got your degree, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you get people that go to like, you know, vocational schools or something, don't have an actual degree. Mm-hmm. You know, they come out, let's just say, being a plumber making $300,000 or $400,000 a year or something like that. I mean, by all means, I would consider that person a success. And they're handy, and they, you know, so like feel like we feel like we need to put this label for one, but also it's like this innate desire to check a box, right? Check a box, and it's okay. Well, you're going to see that through to completion. We got to make parents happy. You got to make everyone happy. You got to check the box. That's
actually a big one too, where it's like, oh, it shows because that's what this family member. Respect her, of course, but you know, we didn't agree on the approach. And that's what she said. At least you'll be able to say to yourself or something that you've finished it. You started something and you could finish it. And I was like, yeah, but there's a lot of things I can say that I started and finished. And there's a lot of things that you, me, probably everyone can say that they started and didn't finish. You know, that's like how you don't have to prove that to yourself unless you do. But I'm not going to use some arbitrary freaking 7 credits to prove that to me, you know, when it's not going to, you know, it's not going to go beyond that thing, which I don't need to do anyway, you know. So, and I think sometimes that bias or that, how should I say, maybe conditioning, you know, as far as college goes, I think that can be the case, you know, where that's the way they're regarding it.
You take it back to literacy, and it's funny because like as a dad again, I like think about this, and I'm like, I would rather. And again, this is like no malice towards the education system. I'm not bagging on that. I'm talking about just general, like how parents view things and like, okay, and not even parents, just in general. I would rather my kids come out like nutritionally and fitness literate and literate, actually physically literate in something than just check an arbitrary box, right? Yeah. Okay. Like, so it's like, what? I would rather they walk out of there being like, okay, like I have tools in my toolbox that I've been ingrained in my mind from as a young kid. Like that person is going to be more useful. Yeah. They're going to be more useful to themselves. They're probably going to be more useful to society. And we should not be demonizing or suppressing that. I feel like that's because those people, when it comes down to GDP as well, like they're going to probably contribute more to society. Yes, and in a capitalistic society, that's the way that it is. We should be embracing people that can contribute. Yeah. And that contribution to society, that contribution to the economy needs to be applauded. And someone that is literate in these things that they don't teach, that competency is going to translate into things that help generations and generations and generations versus this, let's check a box. Like how short-sighted is that?
Yep, very. I could not agree with you more. And I think that the whole, in the spirit of, you know, understanding literacy, like there's a lot of things that, you know, like even being socially literate or even parenting, there's a certain fundamental literacy, like, you know, and it's hard because just like nutrition and health and fitness and stuff, there's a bunch of different approaches to parenting. There's a bunch of different approaches to health and fitness and even longevity and stuff. Like there's different approaches to it and they all kind of work, or a lot of them work, you know. But there's certain fundamental things that, put it this way, in the spirit of complete fairness, I would say it's safe to say that certain approaches are not going to be conducive to, we'll say, parenting. Like, for example, losing your temper on your kids, right? It's pretty easy to argue that that's a bad thing. But if you're not parenting literate, you're probably going to find yourself losing your temper on your kids because kids can be frustrating. But if you are literate, you're going to know, like, okay, me losing my temper on my kids is going to cause problems in one way or another, right? Just the fundamental level. So I'm going to put a lot of effort into controlling that. Even if you have a temper, you're going to actually be conscious and put effort into controlling that. And that goes, it's the same for a lot of other stuff. But the more illiterate we are, the more of these problems that we're going to say, or the easier we're going to get to be trained, whether it be college, like, oh, you should go to college. And, oh, yeah, we should go to college. But if you don't understand, like, oh, why should we go to college? Then that's the way it'll be.
Yeah, those learning the life skills that make you a solid person in life are learned a lot earlier on than just when you go to college, right?
Yeah, I think
and it's a lot of it's the sets and reps too. Just like, I don't want to say the quicker you can get into the workforce, because that's inaccurate, but the quicker that you can start like exercising your skills, the better. Like, and you've got a finite amount of time, especially as a young person. Like when you have energy, when you have, again, like you do things right, you're healthy, you're going to have energy and vitality for a long time, but there's no denying, make no mistake that like you have more energy in your 20s than you do in your 30s, and you have more energy in your 30s than you do in your 40s. And like, there's a certain line of like, when you develop the fundamentals and the work ethic to be able to apply yourself, and how quickly can you put those to work? Yeah. For your gain, for your family's gain, for society's gain, and whatnot.
Yeah.
If you were to say, okay, like let's look at people's relationships with food and like an emotional relationship with food. What part does that play? How big of a part does our literacy in nutrition compared to, say, our emotional gratification that we get?
Yeah. Obviously, I can't speak for anyone because I can't read everybody's mind, but
you're not psychic literate?
Yeah, I'm literally not. Literate. I don't have psychic literacy for sure. But speaking for myself, and because I see both sides of it. Okay, so when I was young, when I first got into lifting weights and all this stuff or whatever, as a teenager or whatever, like the idea of food took on a different meaning than it did before, because it's like, oh, now you got to get enough, we call them macros, right? You got to get enough protein, you got to get enough carbohydrates, and you can see that. Like you can see the effects of making certain decisions in regard to food. So you regard food as more of like a fuel scenario, right? How it tastes, sure, that's a factor, but it's less of a factor than like what you're eating, right? Because there's this very clear functionality behind food. And then as time goes on, and I never really like deviated from that much. So it was always just the natural way that I regarded it. So that's why I mentioned pizza. So if I see a pizza or whatever, I know like, oh, this has no function in life, really, aside from like, essentially it's a version of entertainment. And I understand, and that's a real thing, but I see it for what it is, or for how I see it, right? How my approach is to it. So there's those two kind of things. So I think the more that we use it as function, the more it'll be functioning like that in our life. But it takes a certain kind of person to do that. And I think the norm isn't to be fully into fitness. I don't think that's normal. I think that's just like a group of us or whatever, a group of people, who are. So the default will have a lot to do with what tastes good, what am I in the mood for, what's convenient, like that, the other parts of, the role that food plays, I think. So I think that's kind of it. So it just depends on who you are. I think that's what it seems like. It just depends on who you are. In my case, it just depends on what kind of mood I'm in, which is, especially nowadays that we're older, I think that the function of food is more important than the other parts, but the other parts are still there for sure.
Well, then you've got this whole new aspect of, what do they call it? Have you heard the term like functional foods?
Ringing a bell.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like basically there's a category of foods. Like if you go to, it's called like Natural Products Expo West. It's like, and they have it on the East Coast too. It's like basically where, a lot of supplement companies and stuff go there, but food companies go big expos, right? To like basically showcase new ingredients for people to put in foods and this and that. It's like the huge things. And if you go through there, it's in some ways amazing, but it's also a total shit show. Like it's just nuts. The amount of like new revolutionary, like, food dyes, it's that kind of thing, right? So it's where people learn if they're formulating a product or they're creating a food, they go to these. But there's this whole new category of what they're calling like functional foods, which is where we look at like, okay, I'll use for an example of, I don't consider this a functional food, but it's an example of sort of what you talked about earlier, like making a healthier food taste good. Like there's those, I'm not calling out a brand because I actually think the brand is good. Those, how old are your kids?
I'm 7, 11, 18.
Okay. So have you seen that brand, what is it, Dr. Praeger's?
Dr. Praeger's.
Prae, and this is not calling them out or endorsing them.
What do they have?
They've got like sweet potato nuggets, and like the ingredients are actually the ingredients are good. Like I do think they're good stuff. There are some seed oils in them, but the point is, like, you can go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Point is, I think they're doing a decent thing, right? But I find myself torn with that too. It's like okay, just give the kids a sweet potato. But it's like, okay, put the sweet potatoes in little dinosaur shapes, and you can throw them in the air fryer. Same kind of thing to do with like broccoli stuff. Okay, I'm like, okay, net, you're probably doing a positive. But at the same time, like, are you possibly teaching these kids that like they're not going to eat a sweet potato without that, right? My kids happen to love sweet potatoes, so it's a win either way. Like I could give them a dinosaur sweet potato, I can give them a stick. It's fine. Point with that, but that's more of like I would still consider that a food. Then you've got this thing of functional foods where they're starting to like say, okay, rather than fortifying, let's enhance and make a food functional, where you're almost getting a supplement-like effect from a food. Being like, okay, I guess an example would be like a chocolate bar that's now has adaptogenic mushrooms in it, where it's like, this is food with function.
Gotcha.
I don't have a problem with that.
Wait, is that like protein pancakes? Like something
I could kind of consider that a functional food. It's like where you're trying to get another function out of a food beyond food.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, now I don't have a problem with them, but where I go with them is thinking like, we have become so dissatisfied with food as fuel. We've become so removed from it that now we need to apply an additional label to it to give it function, because we've lost the innate ability to see food as pure function.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yes. And that is great. That's interesting, right? So it's almost like it's on its way to be full circle, right? When it's like, bro, okay, let's deviate from nature for whatever reason. And actually a lot of it comes down to the business part of it, where it's like, okay, you got an apple, right? Where it's like, who doesn't like apples? Well, I'll tell you who won't like apples is someone that you condition for this new apple, maybe a caramel apple, or I don't know, something sweeter, more delicious that we can make, because we can tweak the flavors if we make it, So it's like, okay, now the people are eating more of this than apples. And then it's like, all right, well, let's make it even more sweet and more delicious and more texture, whatever, they do the scientific freaking formula to make it like the texture all perfect. Right? So boom, now you're even more down the spectrum. And then after a while, you're like, oh, wait a second. All the benefits of the apple, the functional part of it, are gone, because now it's just a dessert. Then they're like, all right, well, let's put that back in, and keep all the parts that we, have them coming back, whatever. Now let's put the functional part back in. So now we can accommodate the functional people. So it's like slowly coming around full circle until like it's going to end up at the end. They're going to be like, bro, just eat the apple already. Yep. Because, bro, you're making it taste all weird now, kind of a thing. And your body's probably rejecting 30, 40, 50% of it, over time or whatever. Yeah, that's funny, huh?
Well, you're isolating one weird variable of it, like, and you've lost sight of what it is. It's like, it's like you're taking it. Let's just say this is like what's going to happen. Like you take a steak, and people are like, well, okay, well, people clearly want the they don't want to eat a steak, but we want to get them the protein. So let's let's just give them like Impossible meat or something like that, and let's increase it. Okay, well then people are going to be like, okay, well I'm kind of tired of that. So what is something about meat that people like? Well, people like the texture of it. So okay, well we're going to optimize for texture. Yeah. Next thing you know, like 10 years later, like it's not even recognizable, and its utility is completely different, because you've just chased your tail trying to make people happy with what they think they want. Yeah. But people don't know what they want, or they might know what they want, but they don't know what they need, right? Yeah. And when you eat a real food, you eat a steak, you eat some broccoli, you eat sweet potato, you eat something close to the earth, you eat the real food, there is a food matrix that gives you this amazing, beautiful thing of everything that you need when it's consumed in its real form, right? You eat that apple, and that apple has vitamins, it has fiber, it has hydration, it has these things that you need, and nature knows that. And the more you start to change that, and you try to like isolate a variable from that apple, people like, there's a vitamin in apples that are good for the brain. Okay, well, let's double down on that. And let's make the brain apple. And
exactly.
Then never mind, we're going to also make we're also going to make this apple look like a brain, but that's like we're going to make it bumpy. So then when people eat a brain, they feel like they're getting smarter. And then next thing you know, it's like, these apples make you smarter. Yeah. And it's like, okay, do you forget the fact that the apples also have fiber? Did you forget the fact the apples also okay, maybe you eat this apple for fuel, for energy. Now you're eating this apple because of the brain effect. It's like we completely lose this.
Yeah. Yep. Makes sense.
Okay, what about in the world of, let's say, I want to kind of pivot for a second. We talked for a second about jiu-jitsu and cardio, right?
Yes,
I just talked, like you asked if I'm good at cardio, if I like cardio.
Yes. Psycho.
What do you think? What's your take on this almost obsession with resistance training that's happening in podcast land, and I can just, I mean, this might tail the conversation a certain way, but like I like cardio. I love to do it. I like to run. I like to do that. But I'm seeing so many people like double downing on resistance training, but I'm not seeing people necessarily like double downing on the cardio side. Like, what do you think? Do you think we're in a weird spot where, I'm just curious. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but it's.
I think I know what you're asking. Like what up with that, right?
Yeah.
Like, freaking what up? So I don't know, but I'll tell you because I'm caught up in it too. I'm down for freaking. Do you know Sal DiStefano?
Yeah,
from Mind Pump.
Mind Pump guy. Yeah.
Bro, those guys are freaking awesome, by the way. So he was the first one that was going heavy with the, hey, resistance training. If you're gonna pick one, that's kind of the most beneficial one. And of course, I'm like. Freaking hell, that's good news to me because, bro, I don't like cardio, bro. Unless it's like fun cardio.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, that's great news. So I'm all, the confirmation bias kind of scenario. Then freaking Dr. Gabrielle Lyon saying the same or similar stuff, like talking about the resistance training and like all this stuff and muscle mass. So I'm freaking down because from the beginning, and I played sports growing up, where from the beginning it was like, it seems like, and I'm kind of thinking of it from a holistic perspective, where as a kid, cardio never had any kind of payoff to me, ever, as a kid. But even when I was like 10 years old doing push-ups, I'd get a little pump. And back then I thought that the pump was my muscles actually growing. So I was like, holy cow, freaking, I get an immediate payoff. Like my muscles just get bigger when I do this stuff or whatever. So like, it had that short-term reward, and then so it's just this cycle of like, I want to learn more about this, and you get into it, so you can get the pump while you're lifting, then you actually get bigger, and you have bigger muscles, and all. It was something that I embraced, like super early. Cardio, any kind of cardio or long distance run, like just didn't have it for me. So I think a lot of guys are like that, where having big muscles is better than being able to run a bunch of marathons. That if you were to compare the two, I think most guys are like that. Quite frankly, it's a lot easier to lift too than it is to do cardio, in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of guys like that too. So when we hear this like resistance training, building muscle mass, this is overall beneficial for even in these other ways that we thought that maybe it wasn't, as far as like losing body fat and like all this stuff or whatever. We always thought that cardio that's how you lose body fat. Diet cardio, that's losing body fat. Resistance training, lifting, that's for building muscle, right? We thought they were like that. But now we're getting this news that no, lifting does even better than cardio, which we don't like anyway. That's good news. So that's, oh, hell yeah. Let's listen to more of that. Let's talk about more of that. So I think a lot of us, well, I'm only speaking for myself. So I'm freaking embracing the whole thing. I'm like, hell yeah. Functionally, that's a whole different thing. Because I know that, like, if I don't do cardio, if I don't go to jiu-jitsu training for a while, and then I go back to it, I'm freaking dying. And that sucks. So functionally, I don't want to ignore that part of it. But I think, to answer your question, I think that's why. I think because we like to hear it. Oh, that's why I like it, because I like to hear it. I'll listen to, because the message is pretty simple. Where, I mean, unless you want to go deep into like all the studies and like all that stuff, which I think a lot of us after a while, it's like, hey, are you saying it's good? Is it good or is it bad? It's good. Okay, cool. That's kind of all we need, I think, a lot of us. But at the same time, we'll listen to it forever. Like if you're saying it, oh, freaking Thomas DeLauer is talking about resistance training and how all the benefits, I'm listening 1 hour. I'll listen. Very next day, Sal DiStefano's talking about resistance, saying the same exact thing. 1 hour, I'm listening to the whole thing. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, the next day, I'm listening to the whole, saying the same exact thing. I'll listen because it like confirms,
Dude,
I think that's why.
We have like the perfect barometer for that with this channel. Like with my channel, it's like we can see so much to the point where we say, and here's a peek inside, behind the curtain, like we have what we call feel-good content.
Yeah.
We have content that we release when we feel like the audience needs a win.
Yep.
when we feel like sometimes I've been spilling information on them that they may not want to hear, and it might piss them off. They might unsubscribe because they're like, Tommy's telling me to do cardio, or he's something that you don't want to hear. Something that, like, for example, like, I mean, a common one, like if I talk about any benefits of fiber, sometimes people are like, no, it's all meat. I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but fiber is also good. Like, if I had it my way, I would just eat meat, but I do know there is some benefit to fiber too. So things like that. But then every once in a while, I'm like, feel good content. You know, the feel good content on my channel absolutely is resistance training stuff, protein stuff.
Like, I like the fasting stuff too. By the way.
But that also, like, as the audience has grown, that's upset some people too, because we've gotten a lot of new audience that doesn't necessarily like fasting. Like, core audience was built on fasting, but audience has grown, and like there's a lot of people coming. So then now there's fasting creates a weird conflict, which is kind of cool to watch. But either way, it's like the feel good content is like, okay, every once in a while, just throw a video out there that we know is going to get killer views, and so we know is just going to keep retention, and it's not even anything amazing or groundbreaking. It's just saying stuff that they want to hear. But it's okay. Like, we don't see that as a problem. We see that as like, okay, if this keeps them engaged. But where I see things becoming a problem is that, like, in podcast culture and in like YouTube culture, if we only start watching things that are confirmation bias for us, like, you know, okay, resistance, like, we're not going to electively click on something that's going to tell us to do something we don't want to do. Like, and so that leads to a culture of like, you have to game people into clicking on a video. You almost have to trick them, and then you're like getting this element of trickery, and it's not authentic. And it's like, okay, so we're naturally just in this ecosystem of just wanting to click on shit that we already know is like we want to do. That's slightly a little bit easier. And it comes into the same, like, even with Jocko's style of content, like, people will watch that because they want to get motivated. They want to feel motivated, but the next action they take is possibly just clicking on another video. It's not actually putting it into action. And it's like, how do we disrupt that? How do we stop that? Like, how do you get people to click on things that, like, we've tried things like, you know, the one thing you should be doing that you don't want to do. You know, no, people actually, even though as clickbaity as a title as that would be, that should get a click, it's like, no, I don't want to learn something that I shouldn't do. I'm not going to click it.
I would say this, and this is not a quick fix at all, because of literally what we just talked about, where I've been kind of going deep into this recently with my good friend Carrie, where all of this is all driven by entertainment, this whole thing, where otherwise you go to a lecture hall with some like real nerdy dude explaining freaking thermogenesis or whatever he's explaining. Bro, no one's going to listen to that. Like, no one, because it's not entertaining. But you get freaking some ripped buff dude saying this, swearing every once in a while, and freaking this guy's a bro like me. Hell yeah, that entertainment value is in there. Bro, they're going to tune in 100%. And he's talking about stuff that I want to hear. I'm tuning right in. You get guys who have a sense of humor in there, or some girl who's pretty or something like this. Is like the entertainment value has to be there. Okay, that's it. So it's all entertainment, we'll say primarily. The secondarily, that's when your information, that's why who was the one they call it edutainment or whatever? Yeah. So that's correct. That's, even as made up as that word is, that is a correct word. So you have that going on. But if you really care about that cause that you're talking about, where it's like, hey, I don't want to be just confirmation bias. I want to do, I want to introduce fiber and like stuff that people, the chores of this whole thing that we're doing. It is the responsibility of the creator, where you have to present it in a way that they're gonna consume it. So whether that's like entertaining, or I think a big way to do it, and this is just for me as an audience member, when someone throws it in and says, hey, I hate cardio too. Like, I'm just saying, yeah, I know you like cardio, but listen, for example, hey, lifting, hell yeah, lifting all day, whatever, but freaking gotta do cardio. And kind of relate to the audience. If your audience likes lifting, doesn't like cardio, just be like, I hate cardio too, but I had to do it. And you can kind of relate to the audience in that way. They're going to start listening slowly but surely, and start listening a little bit more. Like, okay, I know that's what, are you doing cardio? You hate it too? Fuck, I'll do it. That's what we're doing. I hate it too. And we can kind of commiserate on hating cardio, but at least I'm doing it, and at least I know about it more now, So, and that's just like an example, but The point being, short answer is it's up to the creator to present it in a way that's consumable, knowing that this whole thing is just entertainment. The whole thing.
That's a good point, man. Like, I mean, you are gamifying it. You are making it where, okay, like, I understand what people want to hear. I understand that you got to throw them a little bone here and there, and you got to relate with them, because you have the element of like YouTubers. You have authoritative type channels, which I would consider mine like edutainment, but much more on like the authoritative type channel, right? Yeah. Where it's just like, nope, I'm delivering information, and this is, your resource for XYZ. People come to me for this information. Yeah. But when you do that in an authoritative way, it can almost elicit a visceral response from people when you tell them something they don't want to hear. Yeah. Instead of being like, and it's very hard to do that. Yeah. So, I mean, I look at it as a creator, it's a really difficult thing, like, because you almost need to have dialogue, because you got to be able to like have one person jump in. It's sort of the what's it called when you've got a social proof aspect, right? Like, so if you've got one person delivering information, that one person's like, it's their value assignment for the person viewing, or the person viewing, their value assignment of that person delivering content is at that point in time going to be very high, because they've assigned a value to that sole person. So if that sole person says something that upsets them, they take it really hard. Yeah. And they can actually take it personally, and they can actually really start to despise that creator, and therefore tune out with the information that comes subsequently. But when it's in a podcast format, it allows for me to say something like, well, like, you're talking about how you don't like cardio, and I'd be like, yeah, but bro, like, it is important. Yeah. It is good. You do have to do it because, X, Y, Z, and it's going to help you with this, and you want to be around for your kids and stuff like that. And it's put in a way where it's diluted. That value that value assignment is diluted, where there's an equal value assignment between you and me both. Yeah. So when I say something that upsets them, they're kind of like, all right, it's diversified a little bit, softens the blow, and they might really be willing to digest it. And I do think one of the problems we run into with content is like, people are doing too much feel-good content. Like, we got to have the uncomfortable discussions, because otherwise we are in a unique position as people that can create and people that can reach a lot of people. And I know people talk about, I hate the word platforming. I can't stand that. You ever hear people say that? Like, people
platforming, hell yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like if I have Paul Saladino on my channel, you're platforming Paul Saladino. Yeah. Like, no, I'm having interesting discussion, because there's actually things he and I disagree on that might show up, and it might get people thinking, right? So like, if you and I are having a discussion and there's things that you and I don't agree on, but at the end of both of those things, it's something that the viewer takes away as like, hey, okay, they disagreed on this, but they came together on this, and I don't want to do that, but I should, because I'm in a better society and better myself. But we live in such a world where we just want to provide entertainment. We got to find, like, creators need to get better at weaving the education into the entertainment in a way that's giving them the information that they actually need. Yeah. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
Of course it does. And you're right. Oh yeah. But that's now you're talking about like this combo of things that kind of gets kind of complex in a way, because if the primary thing is like, okay, I'm going to follow you because you're jacked, you sound like you know what you're talking about, because quite frankly, I don't even know how much that really means. If you, like, how do I know that you for real know what you're talking about versus the guy who says something different than you? And you can say like, oh yeah, there's a lot of studies. You can even have the image of the study. Bro, I'm not going to look at that study. Like, no one's going to look at that study. I'm too busy watching Buff freaking Thomas talk that good. That's really what I'm here for. So if you say it's true, cool, I'm following you right now. And that's what it's about, really. Like, just from a normal audience member standpoint. That'll start mattering if, A, I care about the for real truth, which is hardly any of us, I think, to a degree, And then on top of that, if you can figure out the way to get, like, basically to get your kids to eat their vegetables, essentially, that's what you're asking. Meanwhile, you have a whole restaurant that, like, all the plates, they don't have vegetables. They only got the good stuff and dessert, by the way. So it's like, why are they going to keep coming to you when you're all of a sudden serving vegetables, kind of a thing. So it's like, all right, then you got to figure out essentially how to serve vegetables in a way that delivers them.
We have to, from a content perspective,
yes, exactly,
make those fortified sweet potato nuggets.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, you can.
Right?
You can go that way.
You're Trojan horsing information.
Yeah, and or you could, and this is gonna sound simple, but it's probably hard. You have to create a brand, if you will, of, hey, we do the right things regardless of how it feels or doesn't feel. Like, we do the right things, and then people being a part of that will be their feel good content. Like, yeah, I'll do stuff that I like and don't like, boom, because I'm part of this brand, because I follow this guy, kind of a thing. And I think if you can pull that off, that that's a step in the right direction, I think.
Now, what about the heroes online that need to, and I'm not talking about I am talking about Callout Culture, but I'm talking about the people that like feel like they need to be a hero and save everybody from bad content or from bad advice. And it's talking specifically from fitness and nutrition, right? Because there's a select number of people that their entire brands are built upon. Like, no, I want to make sure that you don't fall for this. Do you think that's less than altruistic? Do you think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Obviously it depends. But yeah, I mean, come on, listen, like I said, this is what I think. I don't know. I don't know. I just see what I see or whatever. But this is what it feels like. That, yeah, you get a lot of that for sure because of, like I said, it's driven by this entertainment. So if you can sell to me that, hey, you're doing it wrong and I have the fix to your mistake that you're currently making, by the way, I'd be like, oh shit, I'm making a mistake. Oh, I want to say, so it like stimulates my mind in that way. So yeah, there's that going on. There's the confrontation, like you mentioned Callout Culture. So if like Thomas DeLauer is calling out Carrie online, we like to see that confrontation online, and then we're going to choose a side, and it's just very fun. It's very entertaining, So I think a lot of it is driven by that. But at the same time, I think that there's probably some altruistic elements to that, for 100% for sure.
Do you think it moves the needle? Do you think like if someone posts something on Instagram and they're telling someone to, I'm just going to make something, pull something out of my, whatever. So they say, if you drink lemon juice, well, actually, let's take one that has some like mixed scientific merit. Let's actually say something that could be controversial. Weird that lemon juice would even be controversial, but there's some evidence out there, not all evidence, that having like lemon juice with carbohydrates, like the acidity, can reduce the glycemic impact of it. Let's say someone does a video of that and they talk about, hey, like have lemon juice along with your rice because it could lower the and then someone creates a video about that person being like, this idiot is trying to tell you that. Yeah. But was the net of them telling someone to have lemon juice with their rice, was it really a problem? Let's pretend they were incorrect, right, but they're actually trying to help. Right. And then the call out person is really not gaining anything other than throwing someone under the bus. Right. That's where I have a problem, right? Because I just wonder, like, what is the net here? Yeah. Like viewership? Yeah. The net is viewership. Yeah. The net is not like, now you have people confused whether they should have lemon juice or not, and torn. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it comes down to entertainment, I think, at the end of the day, because the thing is, you get like, and I'm trying to think of like everybody, because it's like a spectrum, like you have some guys who just love to just call out people, and no matter what they're saying is right or wrong, really the fact that they called them out, that's the part that people click on. That's the part they want to see and hear about, right? And maybe they have a side on the whatever the behavior is that they're calling out or correcting or whatever. Maybe they fall on a certain side, maybe. But the primary thing they're clicking on is the confrontation, the fun, the drama, right? That's what they like. There's that side of the spectrum. Then there's the side of the spectrum of like, they're really trying to do the right thing and be like, hey, this is a misconception, and here's to clarify, like they're really honest about it, in altruistic, if you will. And then there's everyone in between. But I think, again, back to the entertainment part, it's like no one's really going to click on that if it's not entertaining. So some people, they just double down on the entertainment part of it. And then the other people, they want integrity for their brand, which that's why people tune in, because their brand has integrity. So they want to maintain that brand, which in and of itself is the entertainment. They, you know, people who are entertained, like, who are like some trusted guys, you know, like Huberman or Peter Attia, where these guys, like, for, you know, of course you get guys who disagree here and there, but overall they kind of have this integrity part of their brand, we'll say, where they're not just guy flexing in Lamborghinis and saying hell yeah fast all day. It's not that, you know. It's like, hey, I'm a straight up doctor, you know. So it's like that's part of the entertainment, if you will. It's like the sophisticated entertainment kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, they do a good job of weaving that entertainment in, probably almost even unconsciously. Like, it's just there. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if it wasn't entertainment, no one would click on them. Like, I mean, bro, you're in the same boat where, like, we had Huberman on, and we talk about this off air. It might have been on air, I forget. But the reason people were following Huberman, the reason we are following Huberman is because he's a bro just like us. Yeah. He's not some nerdy dude, you know, bow tie in front, you know, in a lecture hall saying, get sleepy. He's not that. He's a freaking bro. He has a bunch of tattoos. He's buff. He's freaking, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, oh, yeah, this is my boy right here. And he's like a big brother. Yeah. Like an experienced big brother who freaking got his education. He was a skater and all this stuff. And we're like, hell yeah, all good. That's like part of the deal, you know? So Peter Attia, these guys with high integrity, they kind of have the same thing going for them, you know, where it's like, hey, but I have integrity, and us that we still love to be entertained, we're going to follow them because of that sophisticated integrity, you know? So anyway, like I said, you have the two spectrums ever in between, and it just depends on the person where they want to exist on that thing. But yeah, and I think you're an audience member just like the rest of us, as far as you being like annoyed with certain guys over here on this side of the spectrum, where it's part of the entertainment in a way, because you're watching, you know, we kind of like to get jabbed a little bit and be like, frick that guy's, you know, whatever. It's part of our entertainment. Otherwise, if it's boring, if it's not entertaining, we're going to click on something else, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you for sure. And there's not a lot of people in the health space that I actually feel like any crazy emotion negatively towards, because I understand the game. Yeah, and I know most of them now, and I know that, like, when I talk to them at face value, they're usually good people, and they're just trying to figure out how to make a business work. And like their goal isn't to hurt people. Their goal, I wouldn't say it's even to help people either, but their goal is just being like, how do I just get information out there? How do I win the eyeballs? Right. And that's where we could run into a problem. Is it's like, okay, if you have too many people just competing for eyeballs without some, but the thing that is nice is that I always say the cream floats to the top. Like, the good stuff does end up getting to the top and getting the most eyeballs. Like, algorithmically, there's going to be things at play that can dictate that. But a lot of times the good stuff will go to the top as far as like who will click on what. Over time, I think you're right. Yeah. That's not necessarily the case short and medium term. Yeah. That's not correct. Yeah, but overall, the guys who are going to stick around is the guys who can endure the low views for a little bit and not going to just be all reactive and be like, oh, we got to make it more clickbaity, or, oh, we got to, present more drama in our videos. We got to start calling guys, when they don't react to that kind of stuff, they just really keep that, stay the course. Yeah, exactly right. And if it's worthy, like you can't be lying. Yeah. You can't be just freaking like have some weird alternative freaking incentive or whatever, and it slowly becomes obvious. Obviously, if you're doing the right thing, saying the right stuff consistently, then over time. Though. Yeah, man. I mean, people sometimes poke fun of how prolific our channel is, like how much content we create, how much we release. Like 40 videos a month, right? It's like a lot of content, and it's not for the money. It's because we also know that. Like, some are going to pop off and some aren't. Yeah. And that at the end of the day, it's like, if you want to have better chances of some videos blowing up, you've got to create more. But also, it comes down to the fact that people only see the videos that are exploding. They don't see that there's a lot that don't perform. And being able to weather that is really important. Yeah. And so we just accelerate it by producing more, because if that was drawn out, we could have weeks where there's lulls, but we don't, because we have enough volume where we might have a few days that are lulls, videos that might get 20, 30,000 views, and then we'll get one that gets a couple million, and it's like, whatever. But being able to weather that and know that sometimes like you're going to deliver content that you're doing the right thing, because this content needs to be seen, and the people that are going to see it are going to get tremendous value out of it. It may or may not go somewhere, but you just keep riding, because like the people that do see that, and the more of those low performing videos that you produce, the more that you're going to get people from different areas seeing these videos that are high integrity, relatively low view count, and that's going to stack up. Because then you've got, okay, this subset of people saw this low performing video, this subset of people saw this low performing video, and on and on and on by sheer volume. Eventually you have people that are like, okay, cool, like integrity, and you've built a base of people that trust you because you are serving them what they want to hear and what they need to hear.
Yeah.
Not just what's going to get massive views.
Yep. Sometimes the vegetables don't go viral. Yeah.
No one wants to hear that. No one wants to see a video like 7 benefits of fiber.
No, they don't.
No. But, the nice thing about YouTube too is that there's the SEO element to it. So you're going to have grandma that's going to come along and be like, my doctor said I need more fiber. So what are benefits of fiber?
Yeah.
And then there's Thomas DeLauer, right? So it's like, there is a benefit to that, but it's like we've just, internally our team, we've basically made a promise to not do like reaction videos. Like we just don't do that. It's just like focus on our craft. Let's create reaction videos. And if we ever do a reaction video, it's usually in a positive sense to be like reinforcing or double downing on something that maybe didn't get explained fully.
Yeah, right? I dig that. And reaction videos are, which I love, by the way. I'm down for the entertainment value, 100%. And but reaction videos are a different thing for sure. Like you're literally doing a different thing with a reaction video. And otherwise, just continue being you. And you've been around for a long time, so get it.
I think the only way that people, if someone's been around a long time in the space, I think they're either really dang good at marketing, but generally speaking, if they've been around for a long time, they're usually fairly trusted, right? It's like you've got, Huberman's been around a long time, Atia's been around forever. A lot of people on my channel may not agree with Lane Norton, but he's been around for a long time. And at the end of the day, like his message hasn't changed.
Right.
It's I got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah. Well, the value in that way is undeniable for sure. Yeah.
Well, man, we came a long way from talking about like what you eat. But this went in deeper in a way that I'm kind of glad it did. Yeah.
Bro, I'll tell you. Okay, and I'm actually, there's a few things I got to ask you, by the way.
Yeah.
So two buckets, we'll say. Okay, so I have like some go-to like meals that I make that are really convenient that I think are really good and seem to work because I've done it for a while. Okay, so one is ground beef. I try to stick with grass-fed, and I try to stick with like the 90 or higher % lean. So ground beef, bison, or elk. So you mix that up, saute that up with whatever freaking spice or rub or whatever you put in there. Put egg whites in there. Not too much that it's like an omelet, but put egg whites in there. Put salsa in there and jasmine rice, which I got from you, by the way. One of your old school videos about jasmine rice. I was like, fun. We're eating jasmine rice. That's what we're doing. So anyway, I eat a lot of jasmine rice.
Dude, you've been following a long time.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So jasmine rice, egg whites, ground meat of some sort. Boom. In a mix, put salsa on it. Extra chunky. How do we feel about that?
Dude, hell yeah.
All day, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so
egg whites mixed with, or just eggs in general, not just egg whites, mixed in with ground beef is amazing.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, good. So I was making sure I didn't, maybe I was missing something, but like, hey, you shouldn't do that.
Especially if it's the lean. I guess you could, if you were going like a super high fat beef, I might be like, I try to like compartmentalize, or should I say segment is a better word, my fats and carbs a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Like, you've probably seen me talk about that. That's up for debate scientifically, by the way. So I'm not saying that that's like a cardinal rule from a scientific perspective, but the evidence kind of points to the fact that like, at least in larger meals, that's probably better to like go, okay, leaner protein, higher carb, and then on the meals where you're higher fat, maybe keep the carbs and the fats somewhat separate, because mitochondrially, like they preferentially run on one or the other, right? So when you take in like 1,000 calories of like fats, carbs together, the mitochondria kind of has to decide what's coming first. Right?
Okay.
So but you're using lean beef, so it's
Okay, well, but that's good to know, because sometimes, actually pretty often, this is more of a dinner scenario where I'll get a ribeye steak, which is way higher in fat, and rice.
Yeah, I would just go with you're probably fine because the protein is slowing down so much of the absorption of the carbs. So when protein's in the equation, it's not as big of a deal. It mainly comes into question with something like hyper palatable where there's not even protein involved to like blunt anything. So donuts, Twinkies, things like that. So you're probably fine with the ribeye, but you might want to just maybe elect for like a slightly lower glycemic. But the thing is that like rice is not that high glycemic. Yeah. Like people think it's high glycemic. White rice is like what? It's like in the 60s or something. The glycemic, it's not that high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid. Okay. Here's the second meal. It's more of a post-workout lunchtime thing again. A little bit more controversial. It's called the diet sandwich.
Okay.
So you get tuna, like a canned tuna or chicken, or ones you get from Costco, those big ones. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that low-fat mayo.
Okay.
Little mix. Sourdough toast, one piece, not a sandwich. So it's like an open-faced sandwich, if you will, just one piece of toast, sourdough, and that's it. Sometimes I'll put up like 2 slices of thin tomato on there too. That's it.
What brand of low-fat mayo? I mean, that's the
I don't know.
That's the one thing I might have. One thing I might have a beef with is.
So brands is different.
Oh hell yeah.
Oh okay.
Hell yeah.
I do not differentiate the brands. So whatever one my wife got.
Okay, let's put it this way. Okay. Like I would rather you do a full-fat mayo that's a good quality mayo than the low-fat garbage, because it's still going to be like probably a hydrogenated like trans fat crap. Like, yeah, it's like, that's the thing. Like, that's like, I've done some videos on like, there's a few foods that I just won't ever eat. Like, I'm pretty flexible with my diet, and then like, I don't let hydrogenated crap come into my diet. Like, there's so much like margarine, like, well, who the eats margarine anymore? Like, but like it's just, school. Yeah, but it's like, that's pure hydrogenated. It's a pure trans fat in an effort to try to reduce, you're basically making a polyunsaturated fat into a saturated, like chemically. So like most of like the regular, some mayonnaise might have partially hydrogenated or whatever, but it's also just like pure like oxidized oils. Like you're looking like soybean oil that's just purely oxidized. So I would rather you use like Primal Kitchen or Chosen Foods like avocado oil mayo and just be fine with the whole fat stuff at that rate. Like, I would rather you do that than have like oxidized oils that are coming from because I don't have a problem with seed oils. I'm not like super weird about that, but I do have a problem with oxidized oils. And anytime you take any seed oil and put it on a shelf, I guarantee you it's oxidized.
How do we know what is oxidized or not in
like
general?
A polyunsaturated fat is where you have multiple open phase bonds, right? So you have like a saturated fat, all the carbon bonds are saturated, right? Meaning they're all like, it's stable. It's very stable. It's got carbon bonds that are stable. It's saturated. Then you have a monounsaturated fat, which is like an olive oil, avocado. That means you have one unsaturated bond, monounsaturated. So one unsaturated bond, which means there's only one bond that can potentially become oxidized. When you have a polyunsaturated fat, that means you have multiple polyunsaturated bonds. Every time you have an unsaturated bond is where that basically, think of it like this: a table with a bunch of people sitting there. If you have 5 open seats at the table, any boogeyman can come sit at the table. That's the way you look at it. So a polyunsaturated fat, if you were to take a fish and crack open a fish and fillet it, right out the gate, you've got delicious fish oil that's good for you. If you leave that fish on the counter for 2 days, you think that fish oil is good for you anymore? It's because it smells like rank because it's become oxidized.
Because the boogeyman.
Exactly. Same thing happens with like any kind of seed oil. So it can be a fish oil, which is amazing, healthy. So in my opinion, it has less to do with the fact that it's a seed oil, because this applies to fish oil too. Clearly not a seed oil. So it's the fact that we have a bunch of oxidized oils, right? So avocado is a monounsaturated fat. So you only have one, so it's much more shelf stable.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So here's the solution to the diet sandwich then. Okay, I got it, because you just mentioned don't worry about the full fat mayo.
In this case, I mean, I'm not worried about it.
So let's do this. One of these quality mayos, whether it's full fat or otherwise, and then, because I've done this before too, and it's just as good, I put low-fat cottage cheese in there.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's like half mayo, half cottage cheese mix, added protein, by the way. Yep. So in that case, in my calculation, that would be about 50 grams of protein in a diet sandwich. Yep. Good to go?
Yeah. All right. Have you tried mixing your tuna with sour cream instead of mayo?
No.
Yeah. It doesn't taste that much different. I mean, it's not the same, but it doesn't taste that much different, and you're a fraction of the calories and way less fat too. Sick. You get that Good Culture, the Good Culture brand. They make the Good Culture cottage cheese. They have a sour cream now too.
Oh, okay.
So freaking good. Yeah.
Okay, last question. I think we all want to know this, by the way. Okay, so I saw your video on the protein, right? Whey protein, it's faster.
Yeah.
And then you eat, you know, some steak or something slower, right? So how much protein should, because diminishing returns, right? Whey protein, diminishing returns after 20 grams, 30, 40, 60?
It's between 25 and 30, but yeah.
Okay,
like
so,
with the whey protein, yeah.
Yeah, so I lift, I take my protein shake, my milk, whey protein, 30 grams, then I eat a steak. Perfect?
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you saw my video on that.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was like, that basically, we could absorb a hell of a lot more protein in one sitting than we thought before.
Yeah.
Which is great.
But that's the secret, because if I go steak hard, if I take 3 milkshakes, 90 grams, it's like, bro, those extra 60 grams.
Too fast. It's too fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the benefit, the reason that you can digest, the reason you can consume 100 grams of protein and assimilate all of it is not because your body can assimilate it at once. It's because the rate of digestion allows for sort of it trickling into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
But you can indeed eat probably more. I mean, the evidence is actually suggesting that there potentially, quote from the study, possibly no upper limit. So like you could potentially sit down and eat 300 grams of protein in one sitting.
Yeah.
And as long as you give it enough time to digest, you're going to use all of it.
Boom. Okay.
But that's because meat takes a while to digest.
Yeah.
The caveat with that is that like whey protein is pretty much exempt from that, because whey protein is not like a natural thing in a way. I mean, it is natural, but it's not like, we've extracted that. So that absorbs fast and is highly insulinogenic. So then the law of how much you can absorb at one point in time comes into effect.
Yeah.
So it's like, I try to capitalize on both. So now like my post-workout is very similar. I'll do like 30 grams of whey and a shitload of like 96% lean ground beef from like TJ's. They got the really lean one. And I'll do like, sometimes a pound of that. So it's boom, there you go.
Yeah, perfect. See, that's what I thought. But, you go deep. Let's face it, you go deep. Yeah. So when I watched the video 2 times.
Thanks for the double views, by the way.
Oh, bro, of course. So you go into like your meta analyses and all the kind of the high end terms or whatever, which of course that gives it the integrity. But at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, so now what do I do? Let me be sure that I know what to actually go do, and that was it.
Exactly,
cool. Confirmed by Thomas DeLauer. Fucking. All right. Cool. That's it.
Well, dude, where can everyone find you, man?
Kind of everywhere at Echo Charles. I think mainly it's like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter,
MySpace,
X, whatever. MySpace, sure. Just Echo Charles.
Right on, brother. Thanks, my man.
Yeah, man.